This first picture, the plane, we were on the final approach and the field's over here. And of course we went down and we cut those trees off just like somebody take a knife and cut them off. And then we hit the ground and I thought we started sliding. But this other article says we cartwheeled. I wasn't aware of the cartwheeling. I just was aware of the crash and lots of noise and everything else. But anyway, we were sliding there, and we went across. There's a ditch here. We went across a deep ditch, first through a wall, and then a ditch, across a road, through another wall, another ditch, and you can see parts laying there on the road.
How'd you survive that?
Well, it burned. This is all left of the plane. All they salvaged out of that was a tail wheel.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Yeah. And the co-pilot, when he came to, he'd gone through the top, still strapped in his seat, and he was hanging in this tree.
Holy moly.
He had a bump on his head, he said. He dropped down, but he was all right other than that. Anyway, it started out, we were on the final approach.
Yeah.
Maybe, take my glass off, maybe a couple 100 feet on the ground, or off the ground, and I heard this firing. I was back in the waist, and I thought, the British are shooting at us from the ground, because I thought maybe this little instrument that's in every plane then, it's called an IFF, indicator friend or foe. I thought that had gone out or malfunctioned, and the British were shooting at us from the ground, because lots of times they shot first and asked questions later. But then I looked out the waist window, the side window, and I saw the tracers going by. And I knew what it was then. I knew it was there was a fighter on her tail, and he was behind us, he was on her tail. And he shot out, from what I can remember, he shot out number 3 and 4 engine, part of the control, the oxygen system, and I don't know what else, and I knew we was going to crash. So there was a bunch of loose or baggage in big duffel bags back there by the waist, and I burrowed my way, I don't know why, down to the bottom of everything. That's probably what saved me. But that's where I went. And the guy beside me, the bombardier was back in the waist, see, because we were going from one base to another in England.
Right.
And he was back there. Well, he got shot. He got a big piece of the bullet. And I got a piece of it in my hip. But anyway, he stood up and he says, he was asleep. What's going on? He just fell over. But then the crash and everything, the noise and everything all stopped. And I may have been out for a little while, I don't know. But I looked for the back door and it wasn't there. There was no back door. So I turned around the other way and the plane had broken in two, right behind the wing. So I crawled out that way. And you've heard stories about how when, first I was telling myself, well, I guess this is it. This is it. And there was not one sound in that plane after this happened or when that was going on. I think everybody knew what was going to happen or what was going on. Anyway, you've heard stories about your whole life flashing before you, and it did. Things came to my mind when I was a little kid that I'd forgotten all about. This is just in a few seconds. Anyway, I got out of the plane and crawled out all this stuff, and I got back there near the tail, And the other ground man, Sergeant Matthews, he was laying back there on the ground. He'd gone through the roof.
Mm.
And the article said here he had lacerations and everything, but I noticed his right hand, all the meat or flesh was taken out of here, and his thumb was clear back against his arm.
Oof.
And everybody had parachute harnesses on,
Mm-hmm.
just a harness. We didn't have the chutes because most of the guys then wore what they call a chest pack.
Right.
It just hooks onto the harness, but everybody had a harness on. So I dragged him with my plane about 100, no more than that, maybe 150 feet, got behind a brick wall. That's where I took him. Well, my first impulse was to get the hell out of there, see, but then
Yeah.
I took him around there, and then I went back to the plane, and by that time there was a couple other guys moving around, so we got everybody out except the radio man. We could not find him. He was in the wreckage someplace. And the plane was on fire. I mean, it was burning from the time we hit, and I knew it would blow up, see. See, we got the pilot. Now, this is weird. I don't know how. Anyway, the pilot was clear back in the waist. He had a fractured skull, left arm and left leg. And he had to come out of the cockpit, go through a little, through a 3/4 inch plywood door, through the bomb bay, which you had to walk sideways through there, through another door, through the radio room, and clear back. He was back in the waist, and we carried him out. And then another guy, I don't know how we did it, but see, our plane was what they call a Pathfinder.
Mm-hmm.
Our whole squadron, they converted to, they put a radar dome where the ball turret hung, and then they could bomb through the clouds, see? And then they had a plane go from one base to another base, and they'd lead that whole group. And everybody, all the other planes would drop their bombs when the lead plane dropped.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway,
Is it hard for you to believe when you look at those pictures? Is it hard to believe that only 3 people died?
it's kind of hard, yeah. See, okay, that radar dome came out of its mounting, and it was laying on top of another guy back there in the waist. And that thing must weigh, I don't know, 400 or 500 pounds anyway.
Wow.
And another guy and me just lifted it up and put it to one side. I guess that's when the adrenaline cuts in.
I
And we
guess.
carried him out. The engineer on the plane, he got out himself. He was down in the wreckage, and he had to take his pants off to get out. And he had a finger cut off.